The story of Colleen Hoover and the making of It Ends With Us is worthy of a movie of its own, really. And it's an epic tale that the internet has created quite a strong narrative around, that looking at it with the development and production lens isn't quite as simple as it's been made out to be. Hi, I'm Michelle, and welcome back to the Spotlight Shift. In my 30 plus years as a producer, it didn't mean that I just spent time on set or managing all the areas of pulling all the production partners together and all the things you would traditionally think of. I actually specialized a lot, or focused a lot of my time on development, which is basically where you take projects from the ground up. And it's not something that even a lot of people who call themselves producers spend a lot of time at for various reasons. But certainly my area of special interest and expertise. And I hope to get into lots of facets of that with you all on different episodes coming forward. But what's most relevant for today, since we'll be looking at Colleen Hoover, her deposition, and how she fits into the whole Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni drama, is that it includes experience working with authors and everything that goes into optioning books and adapting it to develop screenplays for film and television. So this is right up my alley, and it's been really fascinating for me to get to basically be like a fly on the wall as I go through all these filings to see how it all unfolded. Something to keep in mind from the outset is that I think the tendency is to lump Colleen in with all the other women involved in this lawsuit, like Alex Sachs or Jenny Slate or Claire Ayub, when in fact her position is really entirely different. And looking at it from her perspective is really a unique lens, and it's a great way to look at this case and the industry in general, really. Okay, sorry, I think I lost my train of thought with Restless Puppy, and I'll try to pick up where I left off. If you've been with me before, you know things are complicated, but we're gradually improving between both of our health. But I'm excited to be here. I'm trying to do what I can when I can. It just gets messy. So, while I'd expected to go over all the development stuff with you today and the industry things, when I actually read the deposition and researched some of the documents in more detail, I was actually surprised by some things that I wanted to go over that actually added another whole element to this discussion, which is why it's dragged on even longer. But because it challenged, to a degree, some of the prevailing online narrative, at least the stuff I'd seen. You know, the idea that Colleen just turned her back on Wayfair and Justin and the people who had supported her all these years, which they had supported her all these years, but just sort of abandoned them and dumped them in favor of, once Blake and Ryan came on the scene, you know, the greener pastures, and she was either greedy and ambitious or intoxicated by their star power. And in fact, I'd assumed some of that actually myself before checking more thoroughly. And there may be some elements, and they may have influenced her, and that's a topic for a different discussion, any actions they actually took. But in terms of Colleen, I wanted to go through it and match up timeline, because some of it isn't quite making sense with that narrative. And it's just a bit more complex. It's not quite so black and white, which, you know, the internet tends to favor the black and white and whatever's the most sensational, simple story. But strictly from Colleen's perspective now, and whether they preyed on her or not, I think that we can see right from development some sources of friction that eventually took apart and how things played out. But before I go any further, I do want to make one thing abundantly clear, There's nothing that I'm discussing today that challenges or changes my viewpoint that Blake's harassment allegations against Justin and Jamie and all of her allegations in Wayfair are completely unwarranted. I mean, that's the basis of the case, and none of this affects that. We all ultimately, I think here, just are in pursuit of understanding of all the details of this case that's gripped us, and I think we can handle some nuance and open discussion, right? Anyway, so today I'm going to take a look at the full picture with you as it pertains to Colleen Hoover from my point of view. And I've only skimmed the deposition once so far, just to get a handle on the basic themes that I wanted to discover with you and do any background research on the documents referenced. So we're going to go through that fresh, and I'll provide my industry insight where I can while we sift through those details. We'll probably sift through deals, but we don't have Colleen's deal to sift through. We're going to sift through the details to see where industry reality meets online narrative. And I'm also going to skip over lots of the stuff that isn't particularly relevant today or the legal technicalities in order to just try to focus on what really matters. Okay, so I think this is my first time trying this whole read-along business. This is coming from Ezra Hudson. So most of this is all Blake Lively's deposition. At the very, very end, we get some from the Wayfair side. So that's curious. We've got... Sorry, here we go. Why did you write that book? What inspired you? My mother and my father were married until I was 2, and I know that she suffered physical abuse at the hands of him. It was always very confusing to me how that relationship happened, because my mother is an extremely strong and independent woman, and I decided to put myself in her shoes with the book and, kind of understand why women stay as long as they do, or why they find it hard to leave. It was loosely based on my mom and my father's story. So were you modeling the character of Lily as a strong and independent woman after your mother? Yes. Now, the book became popular on the Book Talk community on TikTok, right? And she explains what Book Talk is. And then there's stuff about her nonprofit. We don't need to get into that, although we will discuss book Bonanza later. Although I guess we should go back to the whole Book Talk thing and her book becoming big. But no, I think maybe that comes up later. Okay, so this is what a live would be like with me, apparently. What I wanted to go over with you is that this is a text from the very, very beginning of that when Wayfair presented their timeline with their first complaint. And it really hasn't got much attention, but I think it jumped out at me because it just said a whole lot about Colleen's past and her experience and knowledge coming into this production. And it really made me shake my head. Now, unfortunately, it's really blurry, so it was hard to pull up here. So I'm going to have to pretty much just read it from the document itself on my screen. Hang on one second. Okay, this is like such an industry insider experience I guess I had with it. And sorry, now I have to wear these wonky cheap glasses too. So Colleen, this is after they first exchange emails, and then she replies to him fawning over it, wanting to do it. And she says, "Thank you so much for the email. I wasn't expecting you to read it so quickly. I'd love to talk with you more about the project. You get the book, and that's the most important thing to me. My big fear is that I'll option it to someone who thinks it's a hot romance, and they'll take it in the absolute wrong direction." I mean, so that is actually pretty relevant to the whole later discussions about, ratings and how sexy it is or how sexy the book is or isn't. And that is a big, huge theme, and it comes up a lot here. So it is relevant to the case, and I'd forgot how clearly she says that at the beginning. Obviously not her impression. But then we get into just the realities of production and this process of dealing with authors and adapting books. It kind of made me cringe for her. She says, I'm going to be upfront with you about a couple of things so you can decide if you want to move forward. I've sold several film options and I realize not all of them get made, and I'm okay with that. One of the film options was not a great experience. The producers started a fundraising campaign for the film without my knowledge or permission beforehand and ended up taking over $100,000 from my readers. The film was never made, my option was never paid, and I ended up pulling the plug on the project, and the producers never refunded the readers their money. I feel terrible that my readers were the ones punished. So I mailed out $15,000 worth of free products to those who donated to their campaign. I want to be positive that crowdsourcing is not something that will be done when it comes to this film. It's important to me that a funding plan is in place that won't affect the supporters of this book. And I just was like, oh my gosh, of course not. People coming at you with crowdfunding sources are kind of a dime a dozen. Actually, they wouldn't really come to the producers or people that knew any better. But it's just so sad to hear. I mean, there's the odd, tale that floats around out there talking about films that were crowdsourced, and so then everyone jumps on it. But mostly people that don't know what they're doing, and I can't believe anyone, especially someone. She had a lot of books published, but it just made me cringe, and it's so sad. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, crowdfunding and taking money from your readers. It's like that whole thing of, oh, you get a credit, oh, you get some merchandise, you get this and that, and it's just not for a feature film, and it's not for anything like mainstream media. So anyway, I just thought, oh my gosh, certainly Wayfair is not at that stature, much higher, and glad for her that she got put in touch with them in the end, but that's just such a cringy, different experience that she's had and where she's coming from. And she says, well, that experience wasn't a positive one. I had a wonderful experience working with a producer on Confess. It was a 7-episode series that was picked up by Awestruck and Go90, but unfortunately, right before it released, Go90 declared they were shutting down. Because of that, Confess released on an already defunct platform just a week before they were scheduled to shut down. Luckily, my readers got to watch it, so all was not lost. And overall, the experience was so much fun and very surreal. I didn't really have a lot of involvement beyond reading the script and getting the dailies. I just handed it over and let them do their thing, because I was immersed in other projects at the time. So, I don't know those companies, and obviously it was very small scale, but, and things do go under. And it's just kind of sweet listening to her talk about, at least her readers got to see it. And she really does have her readers in mind. And I think that sticks throughout, and it's good to be reminded of. And it is a valuable thing. Readers are a very valuable commodity, and that's why her IP is so valuable. Readers translate to audience. But then she says, also an important thing to keep in mind, It Ends With Us is important to me, though. I'd love more involvement on the film. I've actually been working on a script for it already, along with a producer friend of mine who lives in LA. Her name is blank, and she's a very dear friend of mine and is a huge fan and supporter of the book. We sat down for a week and outlined it last month, but I had to put a pause on it because I'm on a deadline for this book I'm writing. We planned on picking it back up in 2 weeks and diving into it. Even though I'm the author, I believe I've been able to separate myself enough from the format of the book to know what would make the best setup for the film. While I do want to please the readers who've read the book, I understand the need to make a film that will equally touch those who haven't read the book. And then they talk about meeting. And then she says, other than ensuring my readers won't be asked to donate to the fundraising for the film. It's so sad. And hoping to have more involvement in the process when it comes to the script and production. So that's significant and relevant here. I don't really have any other requests. I realize your experience with film far outweighs mine, and based on the magnificent adaptation you did of 5 Feet Apart, I'm confident you could do this book justice and that our visions will align. Okay, so yeah. I think that's all I needed to go over here, but it's pretty significant. And like I say, for me, I was reading it going, oh my gosh, tragic, and realizing it's just like a whole different scale of things she'd been exposed to before. And yeah, and there was some really important things she brings up right at the start that factor into things later. And yeah, so on we go with the deposition. I won't take this much of a break from it from here on. Okay, so they continue in the deposition and touch on this where she says, on April 11th, you talk a little bit about your fears and what she's learned about him. And they question, and it is obviously the lawyer's questioning this, because to make this point, where she says at the top, my big fear is I'll option to someone who thinks it's a hot romance and I'll take it in the absolute wrong direction. And Colleen says yes, and Ezra says, why was that your big fear? And Colleen says, I feel like the film or the book had a good message, and romance has a stigma that every romance novel is just about sex. And I wanted to make sure that wasn't the film they'd be making. You didn't want it to be focused on sex? Right. I wanted it to reflect the book. She's really making a point about this. And would you, in your view, the theme of the book be more female empowerment than sex? Yes. And then in the next paragraph, you talk about the fact that one of your film options that you previously did wasn't a great experience. I think you mentioned that before. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Continues up, well, there's a big gap here. And then we get back to Hudson. At some point, did you enter into an agreement to give Wayfair the film rights for It Ends With Us? Yes. And at that time, did you know that Mr. Baldoni would direct it? No. Was your understanding at the time of what was your understanding at the time of who would direct it? Well, I knew that, signing the rights was the first step and that they would have to find distribution, a director, other producers. So I really was just the first step. I didn't know what was to come. And he did not express desire to direct it. Okay, so you expressed here that you'd hoped a woman would direct it. Uh-huh. Did you tell that to Mr. Baldoni? Yeah, I believe we had conversations about it. At some point, did you learn that he was going to be the director? Yes. How did you learn? At first, I was in a room with him and his whole team the first time I heard he was interested, and he had brought it up in that room, and that was the first time I knew that he wanted to direct it. And what was your reaction when he brought it up? I think everyone's reaction was concern, and they expressed it and said that they think it should be a woman who directs it. And the screenwriter, I can't remember her name, Christy Hall? Yes, I believe that's who was in the room. He said, well, what if we co-directed, she and him? And they spoke on that for a minute or two and didn't decide on what they would do. And so then he asked me directly, after his team had expressed concerns, and asked what I thought about him possibly directing it. And I said that I'd prefer a female director, but if that wasn't possible and they couldn't find one, that I felt like of all men, with him having the platform he did based on women, that he would be one of the few men I would be okay with directing it. Okay, whether it requires a man to direct it or not, I'm not getting into that whole thing. But from my perspective, I just wanted to point out that my first reaction was being in a room with him and his whole team. The first she'd heard of all that, I just kept picturing how many people were there. Oh, I think we get into that later. But I'm like, oh no, I hate these big, huge discussions where everyone's talking about what if this and what if that, and you get everybody's point of view and nobody decides anything. And then bringing up Christy Hall and the idea of co-directing, I don't know, all of it. I was just like, oh, those kind of conversations would always probably drive me nuts. And it's a bit of a hint of kind of the mentality of the production company, that everyone's jumping in, and it's kind of a bit more of the indie feeling, even though they're clearly in bigger leagues now. But yeah, so that was just one thing, that my own reaction to some of the side things. Oh yeah, here it is. As we continue, do you recall who from Mr. Baldoni's team was in the meeting? She answers, no, this was my first time meeting everyone, and there were several people on Zoom on a screen, so it was a number of people, maybe 8 or 9. Yeah. I mean, everybody likes to have all those big general discussions, like, oh, look, we're all making a movie, let's throw around all these big ideas. But it's not always that conducive to being clear and taking charge and, knowing who to talk to what about when. Okay, then we get into, says, I didn't know when, I don't remember when he told me he was going to be the director, and don't know how that came about or what conversations were had. And then the question, did you know that Mr. Baldoni would also star as the lead character Ryle? I don't know if I knew that at the time. They leave it there. But it's interesting that's one thing you all maybe noticed. There is an actual email where Colleen is the one who first says, have you thought about a role, maybe Ryle? And then I think during some of the promotion, it kind of got characterized. I think even Colleen was saying, when he said he wanted to be Ryle, I thought that was a great idea. I think there's a little shifting of how people are presenting this, and I mean, it's not critical, it just worth mentioning. So now, you mentioned earlier that you had hoped to be involved in writing the script. At some point, did you learn that a script had been written? Yeah. When did you learn that it had been written? Yes. I don't recall. And were you involved in the writing of the original script? I actually had talked to Justin about writing it myself, and once, and he agreed to that, which made me raise an eyebrow. Like, that's not generally a good idea. Did he really agree? But anyway, he may have, because I think they're kind of one of those, hey, let's everyone throw our hat in the ring and do whatever. She said, I talked to Justin about it, and he agreed to that, but once I started, I realized I was not the person for the job. I had a lot on my plate at the time, and he had mentioned that script writing with him, like he liked to be involved as the script was being written, and that's just not a way I can work. And so I told him I no longer wanted to write it. Now, we didn't really, I don't think there's documentation between them about all that, but yeah, it's I mean, for sure, sometimes authors do want to take a stab at writing it, and that's fine if you agree to it. It's probably part of the deal. We don't see Colleen's deal if that was it, and but usually, unless they've done that before, you want to be prepared that it's it's a stab at it, and not a guarantee of the final draft. And she'd said earlier she had an outline. I mean, could have seen that through. It's a little murky. Did you hope to have input though in the script? Yes. And when did you, sorry, I don't know why I have these blue, oh, there they go. And when did you have input into the script at some point? I requested to read the script several times, and Justin repeatedly told me it wasn't where he wanted it yet for me to read it. And so I wasn't involved in the script as it was being written. I was involved after it became a draft he was happy with. And not with writing, but with feedback. Feedback? Yeah. You said yeah there. Is that just going to ask you, is that a yes? Yes. I just, it's funny because this happens constantly throughout this deposition. Colleen's always going, yeah, and they say, is that a yes? Oh, yes. Anyway, we're not going to cover all those. I just had to say it once. So, this whole issue of getting it to a state he was happy with before getting her feedback, I totally stand behind on behalf of Justin. I'm glad he took that stance because with anyone, you unless there's something really specific you're wanting their feedback along the way while you're developing, it's just dumb to get notes on it when you haven't even fully worked out what it is you're trying to do. So that's like, doing renovations on a building before it's finished, really. And kind of a waste of time because how can she give meaningful feedback if she's not seeing what he's really seeing and wants feedback on? So that's not shutting her out, and maybe this is revisionist history of how she feels about it, but that's my input on that particular point. Okay, let's continue on. We'll skip a bunch here. Question is, what happened who was at that meeting? Answer. So Justin held a contest for readers to read the script and attend his offices. And that was what the meeting was. Everyone read the script, and then they had a discussion with the readers who'd been selected and then they just kind of asked some questions about the script. And because they were still in the process of writing it and wanted to see what readers thought of it at that stage. And how did you feel about your role in that script meeting? Let me ask you a preliminary question. What was your role in that script reading? My role, I thought I would be to go into and be part of the discussion, but Justin asked me not to speak during the script meeting. Did he tell you why? I think it was because he didn't want me to ask questions that could influence readers' questions. But that was the first week I had access to the script as well. Did you have thoughts you wanted to share? Yes. Did you have thoughts that you would like to have shared at the meeting if you could have? Yes. And when you wrote this email with these notes, was this your attempt to share the thoughts that you couldn't share at the meeting? Well, I asked him how I could get my thoughts to him, and he said that they were on a time crunch and that if I had thoughts to send them that day. So after the script meeting, I went back to my hotel before my flight and wrote out these thoughts. But it was based on what I had read during the meeting that day. He'd given me the script a few days before, but it was during book Bonanza. That darn book Bonanza causes problems. Which is the busiest weekend of the year, and I didn't have a free second to really write down thoughts or read it. Were you satisfied with the input that Mr. Baldoni was taking from you at the time? It was early on, so I can't say that I was satisfied, that I wasn't given the script as it was being polished or made to his liking. He wouldn't send it to me. I thought it would be nice to have earlier input as it was being written. Okay, so this whole issue, she's obviously has a bit of a bee in her bonnet on wanting to have input sooner. And she did have it a few days before this meeting and didn't have a chance. And that does happen, actually. And some people can creatively decide to give you a script when it's going to be too tight for a time crunch. But I don't think he was probably intentionally doing that. It might have been nice if she'd been given a bit more leeway, but sometimes you can't avoid it. And it sounds like she mostly just wanted to have more input in that meeting too, but I get his point. You don't want too many voices steering things in different directions if you have a real agenda for the meeting. And from this, we don't know how much of her notes got included afterwards. Okay, so now we move on to content. Did you ever share with Mr. Baldoni your thoughts on how intimacy should be portrayed in the film? I don't recall. Okay, so then there's a text chain between Jamie Heath, Ange Giannetti, Justin Baldoni, and Alex Sachs. Ms. Hoover, you're not on this text chain. Oh, but yes, this is the one where Justin's forwarding comments from Colleen, and I believe I do have that, so I will try to pull it up and we'll take a look at that. Here's the exhibit. Justin's forwarding this to the gang from Colleen. I wanted to give my thoughts as a viewer of movies rather than a writer of books real quick. The first kiss is the most important part. Some movies put so little emphasis on it, but it's the thing we wait for, the build-up, the what made them kiss at this point moment. So the convo that leads up to that first kiss needs to be something emotionally impactful, even if it's just one sentence. Something that makes each of them give up fighting against this moment. I think where everyone gets it wrong is they think it's the sexual attraction that we want to see, but it isn't. We know there's sexual attraction, we see it, but we want that first kiss to be powerful in so much more than a sexual way. As far as sex scenes you asked me about, there are readers who love to read those, which is why I put them in the books. But as an author and a reader, I much prefer the stolen glances, hand grazes, things like that in a movie. It's fun sitting alone and reading detailed sex scenes to some people, but not many want to be in a theater watching them. In movies, it's way more important we see those angsty looks and forbidden small touches, flirtation, than any extended sex scenes. Fade to black is always nice in movies. Some of these movies that focus on romance think women want to watch sex, but they couldn't be more wrong. We want to watch love and emotions and angst and build-up, and then using our imagination from there is fine. I just like the, oh, sorry, my mouse's cursor's everywhere. I liked, it's fun, I like this part I liked. It's fun sitting alone and reading detailed sex scenes to some people, but not many want to be in a theater watching them. It is true. It's different sitting beside a bunch of other people. Okay, but then I think it's important. It's not in the deposition, but I really thought these two reactions were good too. Ange Giannetti chimes in with what she says about moment of first kiss. So true. And so yeah, I guess Ange understands when you talk the meaning behind some of these things, although, because obviously there gets to be a lot of complication between ratings and what Sony wants and what they don't want. But she's clearly an experienced person working on the creative material. But then I kind of cringed a bit. Poor Jamie. He's such a nice and decent guy, but there is a little bit of, I don't know. He chimes in with, my first kiss with Natasha is a movie in itself. Epic. Too bad I didn't film it. We could have just used the footage instead. Just saying. Okay. Yeah, TMI, and I don't know. People like sometimes it's just wasn't the right time and place to chime in with your own experience. I didn't feel like it, just made me laugh. So yeah, Ezra goes over that text in the depo, only she just focuses on the last part. It's fun sitting alone and reading detailed sex scenes to some people, but not many want to be in a theater. In movies, it's way more important to see the angsty looks and forbidden small touches. Some of these movies that focus on romance think women want to watch sex, but they couldn't be more wrong. So, and then Ezra says, are those words that you wrote? She says, yes. And is that an accurate description of how you feel intimacy should be portrayed in this film? Yes, and why did you think that this was an important way to portray intimacy in this film in particular? I didn't want, as I stated earlier, I didn't want this film to be portrayed as, with lots of sex scenes. I wanted the focus to remain on the heart of the book, which was Lily and her bravery and her leaving an abusive situation. They are very much focusing on that, and some of it Colleen wrote way back, so I think it kind of gives legitimacy to that being her position. At first I thought maybe it was, like I said, just kind of revisionist history, but yeah, that was her perspective. Then we get into, how many times did you visit the pre-production office in New Jersey? Just that one time. How long were you there? Maybe an hour. Were you in town for something else? Yes. And can you describe your meeting with Mrs. Lively? I think it's Mrs. Reynolds or Ms. Lively. Anyway, I was just introduced to her. It was very brief. What was your initial impression? I thought she was... And then Zeldin chimes in with objection. I just thought that was funny. Because Colleen's saying she was very kind and it was a good meeting. I mean, that's not the objection, but it just seemed like funny timing. So I included that objection. So yeah, pointing out that it was, she was nice and complimentary, and they get into a bit more about that. But there's really nothing, I think they're maybe just pointing out there was nothing. Anyway, then they get into her being on set. You said you were not on set during the second phase of filming. Right. I was invited. I did not go. And why did you not go? I don't recall. It's funny. Didn't seem that important to her if she can't remember. When was the next time you interacted with Mr. Baldoni in person? And she says that was the day of the trailer screening in LA. Now this becomes another critical part of this that becomes a big piece of the puzzle. Can you describe the trailer screening? What was it? They had invited influencers and readers to come and watch the trailer early before it was released to the public. And there were, I wouldn't call it, there was an event afterward where we interacted with people. Justin and I sat behind a makeshift flower booth and made bouquets of flowers, and then I also did my EPK that day. What's an EPK? When you record when you record a promo for the movie. And the promo that you recorded for the movie, was there some sort of pre-written script for you? Yes, it was mostly all done on a teleprompter. I'm going to skip a bunch of identifying people and texts, and is this the text we're talking about stuff? Okay, and then we get to, that was just about where they're meeting for the dinner. We get to, what was the purpose of this dinner? I don't recall. We just never had a meeting together before, and we were together all day doing PR. So I think it was mostly, this movie was halfway through being made, and we didn't really interact a lot in person. Since I was in LA, we just all decided to have dinner. Again, I don't know why those blue things appear, and sometimes they don't disappear. Up to that point, did you feel that you'd been able to give the creative input that you had wanted to give into the film? I feel like no. And what is it that you wanted to do that you felt you hadn't been able to do at that point? I felt like I wanted to be more involved in just the sense of knowing what was going on with filming. And I was not receiving dailies. As an executive producer, I found that confusing. And I ended up having to go to Sony to ask for dailies. Just because without knowing what was going on or seeing what was being filmed every day, I didn't feel like I could give input because I was just unaware of what was happening. Okay. And you mentioned you were an executive producer on the film. Oops, sorry. I did another one of her uh-huhs. Is that a yes? Yes. And what were the duties of an executive producer to your understanding? I think it depends on who it is. I didn't really have duties per se. Executive producer, I was told, is more just like a title they give people. The producers are the ones who do the actual work. But you felt, and that is just for feature films, and it's not entirely exactly that straight ahead, but yeah. Anyway, you felt in an executive producer, in order to contribute creatively, as you'd expressed, you needed to see the dailies. Yes. And being the author of the book, I received all the dailies on the project that I'd done before this. And there were other things that were being filmed I was getting dailies on that were not this movie. We're now in May of 2024. In that year, you had not received dailies. Yes, I started receiving dailies because I asked Ange Giannetti if I could get them. And she was shocked I wasn't getting them. So she started making sure I was on the list. And when was that? Probably June or July of filming. So that was a whole confusing interaction of her saying when she was or wasn't on dailies. But sounds like first period, the first chunk of filming, June or July, she started getting dailies. So it sounds like she just missed May. And they skip time too a lot here. So to understand, this is the question. So to understand how it was working, you received dailies. You periodically gave creative input. You did not know whether that input was incorporated into the film, one way or the other. Right. Did you find Mr. Baldoni to be collaborative with you up to this time period of this dinner on May 6th? Now this would be the May following year. Objection. I did. I felt at the time that when I would give thoughts, which wasn't very often, he was receptive, but I don't know that I knew if they were being taken into consideration. How long did this dinner last? I believe we were there for a couple of hours. And generally, what was discussed at dinner? She answers, the edit and Blake. Do I need to go into more detail? And then they jump ahead quite a bit. And then we get back where the deposition picks up again. It's not just me jumping ahead. So going back to the dinner on May 6th, what do you recall? To the best of your memory, who said what about the edit then? About the edit, about Blake getting her own cut, I believe Justin was the one who told me that it's possible the movie could change from what I saw. So obviously she's seen his cut of it by now, or one of his cuts of it. Because Blake was getting an edit and was going to have a test screening in what they call a bake-off, which is where they see which one tests better. Did Mr. Baldoni explain to you why it was the case that there would be a bake-off, or his view at least? Yeah, he said that, I'm trying to remember, I don't know that it pertained to the bake-off. I know he said that Blake was demanding her own edit, and that Sony was allowing her the opportunity to edit the film because she was unhappy with his cut. Did he tell you what Mrs. Lively was unhappy with in his cut? He insinuated that it was more, or his opinion, that she wanted to take over the film. Dun dun dun. This is where we get into the heart of the matter here. Let's get it all on the table. Is that how he described it? Uh-huh. Oh, sorry. Here we did it again. Did he say anything else in that regard? And I'm sorry to the people who are watching this on screen. For some reason, I make blue boxes when I don't know why. Did he say anything else in that regard? You'd have to be more specific. Did he tell you why she thought Mrs. Lively wanted to, quote, take over the film, end quote? Yes, at this dinner, he informed me that this had been an ongoing issue, which in him that I believe the exact words they used were, "We're not saying she's a narcissist, but she's exhibiting narcissistic behavior." Have you on a side here, have you noticed everyone's calling everyone a narcissist? And it's not just on this film. It seems like it's more common in society in general. Or is it just me? Anyway, I mean, they're often, it's probably a valid comment, but anyway. But it is interesting how both sides used that here. Okay, back to just Colleen's recollection of what Justin said. "We're not saying she's a narcissist, but she's exhibiting narcissistic behavior, and that she was making their lives very stressful during the filming, and it was not a good experience. And I remember being shocked because I'd heard none of this before the dinner, and this was well after filming had resumed. I'd already seen the film at this point." And did they give you specific examples? So anyway, before we go on, so according to Colleen, she wasn't aware of any of this, which kind of puts to rest anything that Blake may have been priming her for all of this during the production. So, yeah, that was just interesting to me. But really, I mean, Colleen was hardly involved at all, and not during this period. It's just interesting to consider that they really didn't have anything to do together with each other till much later. Okay. Did they give you specific examples of what Ms. Lively was doing, in their view, that was upsetting to them, either Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath? Yeah, they explained to me that she had a meeting that blindsided them about their behavior, and that it was at her house, and that she forced them to sign a document stating they wouldn't exhibit that behavior anymore, or she wouldn't resume filming. And who between the two of them shared this with you? Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath? It was both of them. So they were talking at the same time, kind of bouncing back and forth off of each other. Did either Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath describe to you the specific behavior that was in this document? They did. What did they say? And if you can, to your recollection, tell me which one of them said what. And if you can't recall, that's fine. But if you can recall, with specificity, who said what, please tell me. I know Justin said that Blake had put in the document that she wants him. I'm sorry. That she wants him. It's so late at night, I'm going to be extra giggly about this. And I forgot about this. She wants him to stop speaking to her dead father. And I asked him to elaborate on that. And he said that he told her that he sometimes speaks to her father. Who's dead? Yes. Did you have any thoughts on that? I was a little confused because I didn't know what he meant by that. No, sincerely here. I didn't know if he meant he prayed to her dead father, or just like if it's part of his spiritual or religious practice. But he did say that he said it, but that it bothered her. And another thing was about something about saging interns, and that she'd asked him that he no longer sage her interns, I believe. I'm sorry. Quit saging my interns. Saging? Do you mean like with the herb sage? Uh-huh. Is that lighting it on fire? I didn't ask what. Okay. What that meant. So anyway, there was another incident where Jamie said that they need to stop going into her trailer while she's breastfeeding. And he then went on to explain to me what happened with him going into her trailer. I have to go back over this, but there's the breastfeeding thing, but then there's the removing body makeup thing. So I thought it was the body makeup where she was really offended because he looked while she was nude. Anyway, that was Jamie, not Justin. He said that he went into her trailer invited because they had to discuss something. And I'm not sure what they were discussing, but he'd agreed to turn and face the wall. But at some point during this conversation, he turned around to say something to her and that she was going to file sexual harassment, or that he feared she would file sexual harassment claims against him. But he was telling me this because it was all in this document, apparently, was going to come out. And so they were just trying to prepare me for what was in that document. I believe those are the only few things that I recall them telling me that night. Is there anything else? I skipped ahead a little. Is there anything else you recall Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath telling you about the document that they signed? I know they were telling me that they felt like if they didn't sign it, then the movie wouldn't happen. And that's why they signed it. But the few things that they did tell me, they said that they did, like saging and the praying to her or talking to her dead father. So I wasn't at the time aware of what all was in the document. But that's all I can really recall. This is where this dinner becomes a bit of a turning point from what I recall, or from when I looked at this before, or at least Colleen says it is. And it's, yeah. Okay, so here we go. Did you have any concerns after the dinner? I think I was just disappointed. And why was that? I didn't know Justin and Jamie all that well, but I know that, I just thought that everything with filming had gone well, which is true. It is kind of amazing that there wasn't all the big blow-ups publicly. I mean, I know we saw things, rumors online of them not getting along, but there's often a lot bigger rumors than anything that came out about this film before. And from Colleen's perspective, and they did get the film finished, so despite everything that was kind of going on behind the scenes, and none of it seemed to be super clear to anybody else, but so I can see Colleen not having a clue. Just thought that everything with filming had gone well, and I was concerned that now there seemed to be like a battle over the edit about to occur, and that concerned me, and I was just disappointed that all this was happening. Were you concerned that Mr. Heath felt like Ms. Liley was going to make sexual harassment allegations? No, I didn't know that was happening. Another key point here, like, even if she felt they alluded to it, I think very few players in any of this expected the lawsuit to come. So even if they went along with things at that time, I don't know how they feel now after the lawsuit. But anyway. But this apparently is her honest opinions about how things unfolded. So she says, no, I didn't know that was happening. Well, you said that he said he was worried she was going to claim sexual harassment, right? Well, from what he was speaking about the incident, I think, I just don't remember the exact words, but I remember them concerned that the incident was going to turn into some sort of claim or be released publicly, that they were worried about this document. So clearly they're, Ezra's trying to set up for Wayfarer was putting plans in place early on to protect themselves, which Colleen wouldn't know anything one way or the other at this point. So they were worried about it being released publicly. Yeah, I believe so. I don't recall if that was, spoken, but it was definitely implied that they did not like that this document existed. And actually, it does sound, even when I first read some of the texts from Wayfarer, I'm like, I understand what they were doing, and I don't think they created any kind of smear campaign. But they do talk a fair bit about feeling like she's going to threaten them with this document and like she's holding something over them. And we know it was bogus, but they were feeling that, I think. But okay, we skipped through a whole bunch, me personally, and also the deposition. Before the meeting, they're describing, which they said they were blindsided. Did she have any knowledge before this meeting? Again, no, I just became aware that any of this was happening at the dinner. Did you have any concerns about the way they were speaking about Mrs. Lively following this dinner? Okay, so here's we get into Colleen's POV. I don't know. I'm trying to get rid of that. There we go. Sorry, guys, about me adding blue squares. I don't know that it was a concern rather than just disappointment. Like, I did feel like for a man who has a platform building women up, that I left the dinner disappointed, that it felt like I was made to not like her. Like, I left the dinner feeling like the intention was to get me on their side or, just explain their side before I heard it from her. What do you guys think? Do you think that's possible that she did have this strong of a reaction just about that side of it? I'm trying to put myself in her shoes here a bit. And is that the kind of thing you would have expected from Mr. Baldoni based on what he had told you about his views early on when you optioned the book? No, not at all. And why is that? I think I was just a little blindsided by the dinner and everything I was told and the way they were kind of forewarning me about what kind of person she was. And did you have any reason to believe the portrayal Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were making of Ms. Lively up to that point, based on your experience? No. Which is, a very clever way of phrasing that, because no, she didn't have any reason to believe it because she wasn't there. I mean, yeah, she didn't hear anything or see anything. She didn't really have any reason to believe anything one way or the other, but it's true. She didn't have any firsthand knowledge or reason to believe this. Do you recall anything that Ms. Fisher was Taryn Fisher's her friend she took to dinner, said during this dinner? I don't. I think we were just asking questions. Like, I remember I was very concerned about the film at that point, and I was asking him questions about, well, what does this mean for the film? And I said that I didn't know that it didn't go how I thought it would. And she said, me neither, that she's talking about dinner here. And we discussed our surprise that they didn't get along and that all this was happening. Like, this was the first I'd found out about any of it. Yeah, but there was a good conversation between them after. So this dinner was May 6th. Did it change your views of Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath at that time? It did. In what way? I felt like if they could speak of Blake, how they did, it made me more cautious with them. And what do you mean by that? I just didn't really want to interact with them anymore. I think after that dinner, so that is pretty dramatic. It's a pretty dramatic shift. And I'm trying to look at both sides. I can see being fair to her. I mean, I can see being put off by it if you're Colleen and from that point of view, and hadn't even considered any of this stuff before. And it's nice of her to think she didn't automatically believe someone's bad opinion of someone else, but that has to go two ways. And I don't know that suddenly not interacting with them was the best recourse, or if that's revisionist history. I think we all have to consider that. But nevertheless, these are some valid points I did want to bring up because I hadn't realized her reasoning behind this dinner and how things really did kind of change at this dinner for her, quite aside from any influence by Blake. Did your views of Mrs. Lively change after that dinner? No, I didn't know her. I didn't know if the views or things they told me were accurate. I just kind of wanted to distance myself from all of it. So, she's admitting that she doesn't know if any of them are accurate. At some point, did you reach out to Mrs. Lively? I did. And then we get into looking at this document, which is an email chain between Blake Lively, Colleen Hoover, May 15th, 2024. Do you recognize this as an email chain with Mrs. Lively that you participated in? Yes. And the first email in the chain is from you on May 15th at 7:11 a.m. Do you see that? Yes. And above that, Mrs. Lively responds to your email and she says, "May I have your number?" Do you see that? Yes. So as of this date, you and Mrs. Lively had not had a phone call. Right. So it actually surprised me that she didn't have any of her contact information. For some reason, I assumed they'd been in contact prior to this point, directly. And I think most people assume they'd been a little closer, but maybe I'm wrong. You didn't have each other's phone numbers? Not that I thought they were buddies texting day and night, but I had the impression that probably Blake had been in touch with her at some point prior to this to start sowing some seeds. So yeah, she says, you didn't have each other's phone numbers? I didn't have her email. You didn't have her email? Ezra's really hitting home on this. How did you get this email to her? I have a production partner because I started a production company around this time, and I was concerned about Blake getting a cut meant. And so I spoke to her about it, and she recommended that I send the notes that I'd given to Justin to Blake, because she said, you don't know which one's going to end up being what your readers see, so you want both of them to have your notes. And yeah, that makes sense. I'd probably do the same thing. If I was Colleen, I'd want to send notes to both of them, because you don't know, you're not in control of which cut is going to be seen. Although, ironically, she did have a lot of power on that later. But she didn't know any of that at this point. Unless she's lying about all this. And I don't think she's actually lying. So, our film agent, somehow got me Blake's email, and I sent this email to Blake. I wanted to give her the same notes that I gave Justin, as my priority was, I wanted the best movie for the readers, and I was concerned, based on the tension between Justin and Blake, that Justin would not give Blake my notes. So I sent them. You felt like you needed to send your notes directly to Mrs. Lively? Yeah, she just said that. Anyway, yes. And are these the same notes that you gave Mr. Baldoni? Again, she just said that. Yes. And in your email, you said you wanted to give the notes in the right hands. What did you mean by that? Okay, I'm skipping ahead a bit. You said, I also sent these to Justin a while back, and some may have been addressed already, but I have zero experience with movie making. Oh, so this is the email to Blake. And I wanted to make sure they are in the right hands. I meant if Blake was getting a cut, I wanted to send them directly to her instead of relying on Justin to send them to her. And Mrs. Lively asked for your number. Did you give her your number? I did. Did you have a telephone call with her following this email? I did. And what was it? Was it just you and her? Maybe Ryan in the background? We don't know. Yes. Was it on May 15th? It was the morning I sent her my number. So if that's what the email is, then yes. Do you recall what you discussed? Yes. She had read my notes and was discussing some of the notes with me, and said that she agreed with me on a lot of them and wanted me to come watch her edit. So she invited you into the edit room? No, she was having a screening. She wanted me to come to New York and watch her screening so that I could see what she had done. Well, now, of course, Colleen's going to be thrilled to be included and added to the screening. I mean, Justin had sent her a cut though, so it's confusing how much she'd have her nose out of joint or not, because she'd seen a cut and she'd sent him notes, and I don't see follow-up yet on what happened in terms of him sending her cuts and her being able to see her, whether her notes were addressed, but I guess we get to that later. But anyhow, Blake is quick to include her and have her see a screening. So naturally, Colleen goes, why wouldn't you? And what was your impression of the film after you saw the cut that Mrs. Lively was working on with Sony? I liked her cut also, and also had more notes. So as soon as the film ended, I went into a room at the theater and jotted everything I could think to give to her, because I didn't know if I would have the opportunity after that to give notes. But I liked both cuts. Okay, fair of Colleen to say that. All right, so you saw the film on the 19th and you were thanking Mrs. Lively. There is a question. They jump ahead. Sorry, I'm going back here a bit. Oh yeah, because the deposition jumps ahead, because there's a question about, do you recall if you spoke to Mr. Greenstein after this introduction? So, and she says, I don't recall, but it doesn't relate to this. And yet we're coming back to this now. So, obviously this is the part that I think is most pertinent. So you saw the film on the 19th and you were thanking Mrs. Lively. Did you think about the cut of the film that she had screened at all after that initial viewing? Yes. And did you share your thoughts with her? Yes. I wrote a lot of them down at the screening and gave them to her, and then we continued to discuss thoughts over text and phone calls. It's a text chain between Colleen and Hoover. Colleen Blake Lively, and they don't even get into a lot of details up to this point, where she says, so if you go down to the bottom of the chain, it says, from you at 9:37, 11:14 p.m. I love Josh so much. We're chatting again tomorrow, but I feel like he's a good one. Thanks for putting me in touch with him. So by this point, you had already had a conversation with Mr. Greenstein. Yep, it does look that way. Sitting here today, do you recall that conversation? I don't. And then the next entry you say, actually, why don't you read that one out loud? Okay, so we get Colleen reading her own text, so I don't need to find the text and read it to you. It starts with Blake. Oh my gosh, Josh gave me a password to watch again because he wants me to get you my thoughts ASAP. So I watched Justin's latest and yours side by side. I have a list of 57 things I loved about yours more. You killed it. It's so hard in the theater to focus when you're nervous and people are talking, but seeing all the improvements you made solidified and already saw a decision. That doesn't make sense, actually. I'm going to bed, but will send you thoughts ASAP in the morning. I really believe in this adaptation, and I think with this week's edits that you're doing, it's going to be life-changing. My God, thank you. I'm sorry this is a day late. I know I told you it was great already, but I can't wait to type up all the whys and get them to you tomorrow. Did this accurately describe how you felt at the time? Yes. And what was it that you saw when you had the opportunity to look at the cuts side by side that you liked more in Mrs. Lively's? I definitely thought hers had more humor in it. That was very important to me. I remember there were a couple of scenes with the character Atlas that bothered me in the first cut I saw that were removed in Blake's cut. I can't recall exactly all of the things that I liked more about her cut, but I did feel like my concerns in the initial notes I sent her, a lot of them had already been addressed. So you think she made changes between May 15th and when you saw the... No, not based on my notes. I see. I think just that we had similar intuition about some of the scenes. So to make sure I understand what you're saying, oh God, gosh, you guys, I'm sorry, I didn't realize how much the mouse distracts you. Bear with me. So to make sure I understand what you're saying, between the time you gave notes on May 15th and you saw the screening yourself alone with Justin side by side, there'd been some changes to the cut that Blake was working on that you liked. And they do jump ahead quite a bit. And Ezra questions, you mentioned that you shared your detailed thoughts with Mr. Greenstein on the cut of the film that Blake had shown you that you watched side by side with Mr. Baldoni's cut. Yes. I'm going to hand you what we'll mark as Exhibit 14. Exhibit 14 is an email between Mrs. Hoover and Mr. Greenstein. Mrs. Hoover, are these the notes that you sent Mr. Greenstein regarding your thoughts on the cut of the film that Blake had been working on at that point? Yes. And in the second paragraph, you say, I don't know Blake well enough at all, but I do think it's important she know all the things I loved about her changes. Would you describe this as a summary of the things that you loved about the changes? Yeah, and some additional notes that I thought should be changed. And do you know if Mr. Greenstein shared these with Mrs. Lively? I believe I asked him. I was sending them through him to her. But then he said to send them directly, if I'm not mistaken. And then did you do that? Yes. And was Mrs. Lively receptive to receiving the notes from you? Yes. Okay, so one thing that confused me a bit is like she was dealing with Blake directly, but then she gets talking about this. Maybe she just felt like it was only that one call she was allowed to approach the great Blake Lively directly, because now she's dealing with Josh Greenstein. And this is clearly later, because she talks in the earlier text with Blake, she says how great Josh was when she met him. So, and in terms of the business, I mean, and if you saw my episode on that talked about relationships in the business and me looking forward to Josh Greenstein's deposition, because I'm pointing out that I didn't think he'd been focused on enough, because he was a central character, and that was before all this came out. And he certainly is when it comes down to the key decisions going on here. And clearly he's in tight with Colleen and with Ryan, and he has a lot of powers. So already on this production, and clearly a lot more now, as I get into in that episode. But so Colleen's chummy with him here. They're texting and chatting, and I just found that kind of interesting, but it points out just how much of a prize Colleen and her IP were at this point. And yeah. You mentioned Mr. Greenstein told you to just send the notes directly to Mrs. Lively. And is that what he's saying at the text? Begins at the end of, 090 on May 20th. Top it says, got it, just read through it, send for sure, I think they're great. And then, here we skip ahead. If you look down at the next text on May 23rd, it looks like you're texting Josh about plans for the next night. What did this relate to? I don't recall. And then, if you scroll down to May 31st, you say, I'm busy from 9 to 11 if you want to chat after. But despite what the numbers say and feedback say or don't say, I really think we need to choose a cut and move forward. And as it stands, I think Blake's is the stronger one to move forward with. It's just checked a lot more boxes for me, and I strongly feel she can work it to be the best film in edit so that we can ultimately get to the best film for the readers. I appreciate the work put into this by everyone, but the back and forth at this point is going to hurt this movie beyond measure. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to convey my feelings wherever I need to convey them. Well, there we go. All of a sudden, Colleen I just thought it was funny. She's like, I really think we need to choose a cut and move forward. And she's valid having her opinions on why Blake's is a stronger one. And we can get into the technicalities of Josh taking the position he did, but I think that's actually kind of separate. Maybe it's valid that they really wanted Colleen's understanding of her readers because, I was going to point out early on that an author with that kind of IP and that kind of huge success with the readers is like gold in releasing movies these days. So, at a time when box office is suffering and, it was superhero films taking over at these huge budgets, been making on these franchises and more installments of the same thing at huge budgets and huge risk now that they're not all necessarily turning out the numbers previously. To have anything with any kind of built-in audience that's guaranteed is, or virtually guaranteed, is just a big selling feature. And these movies don't cost the same as these movies don't cost the same as all those big budget action films or superhero films or any of those kind of things. So, So Colleen's a hot commodity is what I was going to get at. And people that understand their audience is really valuable. And that's what authors and their readers do in this kind of scenario. She had a rabid following and really active bunch of readers, and other films that succeed are because those people understand their audience. And I hate to say this, but I don't hate to say it, it's true, but don't hate me. I think Ryan Reynolds' success with Deadpool was because he was rabid about that content. He knew it. He had that passion that was involved with the readers of what they understood too, of the whole universe, from what I understand. So, I think that played into the success of those films too. And I'm not condoning any way he went about any of it, and that's why also in my very first video talking about Blake thinking, I just get to walk in and take over this stuff and these, this will all be handed to me, when she assumed that it was just by being pushy that people like Ryan and Taylor had success with their films, when, a big audience is great to have, but you do have to keep them happy because they also turn on you, as we all see even here. So, you have that invested audience, you have to treat them well. But also it's a valuable commodity for someone to understand the audience. And I can see Sony kind of wanting to listen to her a bit. Okay, I'll get off that little soapbox for a minute. I was really surprised, though, that she said, as she said, I appreciate the work put into this by everyone. But when she jumped to, but the back and forth at this point is going to hurt this movie beyond measure, I just thought, how do you know how the back and forth and how it affects a movie? Could be true. I just thought it was very forceful for someone who's, never done any of this before. Okay, so then we get into this next section. At some point, did you begin discussing book Bonanza with Mr. Greenstein? Yes. So what was your thought for book Bonanza with respect to the film? I had approached them about a year earlier, hoping to show the film at book Bonanza, but was told no. That it was I think their reasoning is too far away from what was supposed to be the release date, or honestly, I can't remember why they said no. But then, as Book Bonanza drew closer and they realized that they were going to have a whole film they could show, they changed their minds. And so we began moving forward with plans to show the film at Book Bonanza. Now, here's where I do want to stop and say I knew that Sony knew about Book Bonanza, but somehow there's a lot of talk about how Colleen participated with Blake in stealing it to just take it to Book Bonanza, and contrary to what Wayfarer knew, I can't remember when they found out, but Sony certainly did know. And I know Blake made that comment on one interview at Book Bonanza, like, "Oh, we're showing this to you, even though they didn't want me to," and that was clearly all just hype. And it's been, it was in the documents before, but here it's particularly clear just how much went into getting the movie there. So, yeah, that's where I'm like, it's not worth. I just don't like putting fuel on the fire that Colleen, that somehow it's just like false. So why get ourselves, when we're trying to rally our case for, Wayfarer's innocence for the main claims, get caught up in this part. But so here we go. It becomes very evident here as Book Bonanza drew closer and they realized that they were going to have a whole film they could show, and possibly they were probably swayed by Blake wanting to do it. I don't know. I can't remember. We certainly don't know that here, and it's not relevant because they clearly knew about it beforehand. Sony clearly knew before it actually went there in the end, because I think they did have them change something before they would. Yeah, that was what was in the early documents about how they had to change something before it could go. Not that they didn't have a clue. So we began moving forward with plans to show the film at Book Bonanza. Blah, blah, blah. There's stuff they skip over and stuff I'm skipping over, and all the people who were involved in scheduling Book Bonanza. So we get to it here. And do you recognize this as the schedule for Book Bonanza that was provided to you by Sony? It couldn't be any clearer. It wasn't the schedule for Book Bonanza, it was the schedule for their part of Book Bonanza. So promotional things that Sony was doing in connection with Book Bonanza. Yes, in connection with Book Bonanza and the movie. So if you look at the schedule, it starts Saturday, June 15th. And do you see that? Is that when Book Bonanza began? Well, it began on Thursday. So the 15th is when they were going to show the movie. Okay. Sorry, guys. I keep doing this, but those boxes. Here we go. I'll get out of there. I get extra fidgety when it's getting sore. But I'm going to motor through. Thanks for your patience. Okay. The 15th is when they were going to show the movie. Okay. There was going to be more than one screening. They rented out a whole theater, and so it was screened in every theater. I guess she means like a multiplex, and they screened it in every theater because we had to seat almost 3,000 people. And did it screen on only one night or more than one night? Just one night, all at the same time. Did you invite Mrs. Lively to Book Bonanza? Yes. Did you invite anyone else from the cast? I believe everyone. Well, that's not true. I only invited Justin initially, Blake, Brandon Sklenar, Isabella Ferrer, and Alex, who played young Atlas, and I believe I invited Jenny Slate. And so all the main characters, yes. Who actually went to Book Bonanza? Blake Lively, Justin, no, not Justin. Did she really not remember that he was there? Brandon Sklenar, Isabella Ferrer. Why did Mr. Baldoni not go to Book Bonanza? I believe him and Blake didn't get along. And so Sony or someone decided which one of them would go. I'm not sure at this point. Did anyone tell you why Mr. Baldoni did not go to the book Bonanza? I'm trying to understand if your answer is speculation or if you have some basis for making that statement. I just know that he wasn't coming, but I can't remember why I knew that. I know that he and Blake would not attend at the same time because at this point they wouldn't be in the same location. Did Ms. and then Wayfair attorney says move to strike, and Hudson says, did Mrs. Lively ever tell you that she would not go to book Bonanza if Mr. Baldoni was there? And then they skip way ahead because I wanted to know the answer to that question, but the deposition doesn't have it. Would you say you were collaborating on the edit by this point? Yeah, they're moving into editing now. So not in an equal way, but yeah, yes. When you say not in an equal way, what do you mean by that? I mean, I've never edited before. I had never worked in films, so, I'd give her my opinion, and she was more or less the one who was doing all the work with the editor and had all those interactions. And I just would tell her my thoughts and hope they ended up listening to them. Did you spend time in the edit room with Mrs. Lively? Okay, so things are a little crazy here with the crazy puppy right now. And we're at the editing portion of this, and probably there's been enough gone over about some of this. We kind of know we already knew how involved she'd become in editing, and the questioning is around who was there and when. And this is where we get into some other things that she took exception to, or impressions that she had, and I don't know how valid they are because we don't have any really good tracing of who did what between Blake and Justin, and changes in the edits, and I don't. It's all a little murky, and it's a little boring, but there is another angle here of her saying, for some of her disgruntlement, is that she said, I feel like when Blake would change something in her edit, they would then add, referring to Justin and Wayfair, add some of those changes to try and get their edit a little better, or that's not the right term. And she says, well, going back to your text, you say that you think he said he added those changes, but he really didn't do it when you looked at the film. Yeah, I felt like he said he added some of Blake's things, and sometimes he did, but in this particular instance, I must have not thought that they were actually changed in the scene that I got. Excuse me. So I felt like I wasn't included in those emails anymore, and just the fact that it came to me, I felt was manipulative. So there's this this notion of, or predisposition to think they're being manipulative at this point. I don't know. It seems like that might have got a little extreme. I mean, how do you go from wanting more feedback, and then I guess he was reaching out to her, and then she's feeling like, why now? And is it to manipulate me? And I mean, she wouldn't know one way or the other, I guess, but it just seems like a bit of a stretch and a little in the weeds here. So we're gonna, oh, there's the crazy dog. I know some of you asked about her, but it's because we're now into the middle of the night again. She's like a toddler, where if you keep them up too late, they become worse behaved. But she is healing, thank you. If I don't keep going, we'll never finish. So here we go. And then we're back to dinner. The dinner is one of the themes that I think was important out of all of this. Should get back to dinner, and we're back to the deposition. All right. What Why was that dinner making you angrier every time you thought of it? I think because of the way they spoke about Blake. And I feel like I went into the dinner thinking that we were just going to have dinner, that it was a chance for us to get to know each other. And instead, I ended up feeling like we only went to dinner so they could tell me their opinions of Blake before I heard about what was happening. And I felt like if I cut off communication with them, then they wouldn't have the opportunity to have those conversations with me again. And Mrs. Lively at 11:10 p.m. tells you, next time we talk, I want to hear it because I find myself feeling guilty for pushing back so hard on them to make the best movie. I haven't shared with anyone my excuse me. I haven't shared with anyone my experiences with them until someone first comes to me horrified by their own experiences. And even then, I don't get into all of this. Was that your experience with her, that she wasn't sharing all the details of what she had experienced? And then they skip over quite a bit here. And excuse me, I'll try to deal with Monster Puppy. Okay, here she is, bringing toys with us. Ms. Lively goes on to say in this text, this is skipping ahead, in the deposition itself skips ahead again. Ms. Lively goes on to say in this text, yet somehow I hold these guys' narrative in my gut, and it hurts to be so misrepresented after being so viciously mistreated. Like, viciously mistreated. I don't know what they're vicious. Oh, I don't know what else is going on here that she thinks is attacks from them, but hey, maybe Blake really feels that way. Do you know what she meant by those guys' narrative? Colleen answers, yeah, I believe it was probably the narrative they had about her at the dinner with me. That's how I interpret this. And then Ms. Lively says, and all I'm fighting for is the work. That's all I've ever fought for is the work. And in that, a safe place, a safe set to do the work in. That's it, from day one to today. Do you have any reason to doubt that Mrs. Lively was genuine in what she was telling you there? Oh. No. And then you go on to describe a little bit more. It looks like this dinner on May 6th at 11:33 p.m. You say, yeah, honestly, the narrative wasn't anything too different than what you told us, just from their angle. It's just when I was sitting. Now, this obviously jumps ahead. The deposition jumps ahead. So yes, we skip ahead in the deposition to this part. We'll start this again. I didn't record last night because I was on such a chaotic deadline. We'll tell you everything. Did you understand that Mr. Rothman had some changes for Mrs. Lively that he required her to make in order to show the film at Book Bonanza? Yes, I was aware that he wanted changes to the film. And did you understand that she worked very late in order to make those changes, so that she worked late every single day on that movie? I've never seen anyone work so much in my life. So you find her to be a very hard worker? Yes. And then the book. The movie was shown at Book Bonanza. Is that right? Yes. And how did it go? It was the best day of my life. And tell me why. We had, well, for one, hosting a convention is a full-time job in itself, and then being told days before that you then are adding a whole other essential convention, getting all those people to a movie theater just felt like lots could go wrong. Again, she was certainly aware, and there's lots of those texts with Josh that back up all the people involved. Everything was seamless. Sony sent so many people to make sure everything went well. Not exactly. Sony knew nothing about this, right? And everyone was so happy, and it was just a great night all around. And how was the reception from the fans? A lot of crying, a lot of joy. I don't think I heard one negative thing. That must have been very satisfying for you. It was so much fun. Okay, so I think the key angle here they're getting at is that, boy, there was no fan backlash. So, clearly it was all created later. And we've got Blake talking. This is interesting that Blake texts and says, "It could not have gone better. Can't wait to tell you everything." This is to the editors. "I don't cry, and I'm in the car crying. It was such a beautiful experience." Did you understand her to be, what did you understand her to be describing? She was letting Travis and Shane know how well it went because they also worked very hard on this film and they weren't able to be there. And she was just letting them know that everyone loved it. Okay, so Blake was crying. She was emotional about it all. Okay, next question as we jump ahead. I'm going to we're going to go back to Exhibit 15, if you can find that in your pile. I'm going to draw your attention to Hoover 95. Sounds like a vacuum, right? Text chain previously said was between you and Josh Greenstein at Sony. Do you recall that? Greenstein says, "Congratulations. Heard it could not have gone better." Is that a text from him? Yes. And your response is, "It was so great. Everyone loved Blake and the movie, and even the transferring of all the people went well. Great weekend all around. Thank you for making it happen." Do you know how it got back to Mr. Greenstein that it had gone so well? I don't know who told him. This is where we get to another battle that I didn't remember much about. So if you take a look at the top of page, this is Ezra again, there's a reference to an Instagram post here for Wayfair Studios that posts an article that says, "It ends with us ending explained why Justin Baldoni changed Ryle's fate." Did you see that Instagram post when it was posted? Yes. And did you have concerns about it? Yes. And is this text exchange between you and Mrs. Lively, you telling her about the concerns that you had with this post? Yes. Okay, and did you tell anyone else you had concerns about this post? Justin and Jamie. And what did you tell them? I asked them to take it down because it was not true. And what about it was not true? He did an article about how in the script and in the movie he had Lily leave Ryle, and Ryle did not get custody and was no longer in their lives. And it upset me because the online narrative at the time was very much against the females in the movie, or not that were involved in the movie. Blake and I, Isabella, were getting a lot of online hate, and I felt like Justin was posting things and all the comments on it were about how great he is for talking about domestic violence and all this stuff while we were silent about it. And in this article, it's in particular was very damaging for me because it made it look like I should have, not that I should have written the ending differently, but that he chose to change the ending. But I knew that wasn't true because after I'd written book 2, we had many conversations about a potential second movie. And in order for there to be a second movie, he would still be in part of Lily and the child's life. And so I felt like the article in this interview he did it to try and make himself look like he was aligned with what people were saying negatively about us and not actually speaking the truth in it. And so I asked him and Jamie if they could please take it down because it just wasn't true. And what was it that made you feel that Mr. Baldoni was sharing an article? Hang on, let's try to deal with this. What was it that made you feel like Mr. Baldoni was sharing an article for the purpose of affecting the conversation? Well, if I mis-summarize that, feel free to correct me. Oh, this was when Ezra, Wayfair's attorney Zeldin, objected to Ezra, and she's offering to summarize it differently. Anyway, the answer is I felt like at this point in time, the movie had released. It was doing really well, but stuff just suddenly started popping up online negatively about Blake and me and the way we marketed the movie, and it was all just really shocking. And I think the most shocking thing was how silent Justin was about the online abuse the women in the movie were getting. And this was, to me, went against everything he would preach about supporting women. And I felt very much disappointed that the people who made this film were staying silent especially when Blake was getting so much online hate. And a lot of it was about the flowers and her wearing floral jeans. And I just didn't understand why all that was being said when Justin and I made bouquets and like this was his movie, and I'm sure he approved the marketing plan and that went along with it. And so I was very confused why the things that were being vilified for were not being defended or set straight. What would you have wanted Mr. Baldoni to do? It would have been nice if he or Sony or Jamie, shared the marketing plan and literally, I showed up, I did all of my PR and worked my ass off, excuse me. And I felt like, oh, and when I say that, I mean about the PR, I read a teleprompter a lot of the times. I did exactly what I was told to do, which, is true for Colleen. She is just kind of walking in there and doing what she's told for marketing. So I can kind of get why suddenly she felt like she was being attacked. Now that's ignoring the whole part about people questioning it all because of just how they iced out Justin at the premiere and unfollowed and all of that. So, that's a separate issue that affects all of this. And but in terms of the whole attacking her and anybody else over marketing and stuff, and even just her awareness of the full picture is, I can see how she didn't know some of it. She says, I did exactly what I told to do. And afterward, a lot of the stuff we talked about in interviews, we did at the press junket, a lot of the things about domestic violence, they were just not shared anywhere. So we were online. It made it look like we were completely ignoring the subject and we're having fun and playing with flowers. And it just felt very unfair that the women were being vilified for the things that I also saw the men doing. So did you share your feelings about this specific article with Mr. Baldoni? Yes, I did. Did you share them with Mr. Heath? Yes, it was a group text. All right, let me just ask you a question. You mentioned this negative online commentary directed towards the women of the film. At this time, August of 2024, did you experience that yourself prior to the premiere on August 6th? No, it was pretty sudden and shocking, to be honest. I mean, I experience negative stuff online all the time, but if you're referring to, the negative commentary regarding the marketing and all that stuff, that was all new. So yeah, we do have the marketing happened before the film, and she's saying she didn't experience online hate during that period. And actually, aside from this, when you do read over all this stuff, there's a whole lot of marketing that went on that isn't the particular items we've all seen the most necessarily. And there was all these other pop-ups and things going on. It was a huge marketing plan. It was massive actually, but I think by the premiere and making it all so visible that Justin wasn't included there, and the great unfollowing on Instagram, and I think I mentioned in the last video too that was just the dumbest part for Blake, in my opinion, was encouraging all of that because she had it all. I mean, they all had it all. And, and the film it premiered to huge numbers, and it would have done that either way. I mean, those people are showing up. Even though the marketing got lots of criticism, people all still showed up, but, it didn't draw that huge investigation until people got really deeply into why is Justin not there. And then Ezra asked, had the marketing changed at all in terms of the themes? And she says, I mean, it was pretty much done by the time the movie came out. I didn't do any more marketing after that. But the types of, florals and things along those lines that were being marketed after the film premiered and following, were they any different than what you'd been doing at Book Bonanza, for example, or in any of the other promotional experiences you'd participated in? No, not that I know of. But after the premiere, when everything started kind of going south online, I'd just stay offline. So I don't know if there was how they marketed things online. I don't have knowledge of that. And the negative online, can you tell me more specifically what you were experiencing? Just when I would try to post about the movie, a lot of attacks and comments that I wasn't used to, along the lines of Justin, my having unfollowed Justin. People were curious about what the discourse was. And then people were starting to express that they are upset by the absence of Justin in some of the promo. But you know how the internet is. They can't say in a kind or concerning way. So it was just a lot of attacks. And then also just all the articles that were out there about everything related to the movie that were negative. At some point, did you delete Instagram? And the deposition jumps way ahead. And the question is, now we've switched to Zeldin questioning the Wayfarer's lawyer. And the question is, and you never appeared in pictures at the premiere with Justin, is that correct? And she answers, no. I was ushered down a line and took to my seat. I was only in pictures with whoever was in the tent as we were walking through. So that wasn't a photo shoot like experience, as far as I know. If Justin had asked you to be in a photograph with him, would you have done so? And Ezra objects to that one, but anyway. And Colleen says, probably not that night. No. And why not? I was upset with him for things I had heard. Things you heard from... And she answers, been told by Blake. I see. And things you had been told by Blake are the same things we've been talking about before? And Colleen says, and some other stuff. So here is the shift away from the other narrative of that Colleen's presenting, and we kind of open up, and the lawyers have now opened up a little discussion from a bit of a different angle. And she says, what other stuff? She told me that the religion thing, for one, that he told everyone on set that we met through his faith. She told me he would use my name and tell everyone that we were basically best friends. And so when he wasn't getting his way in a scene, that he would say, well, the author wants it this way. I can't recall other things. I don't know. I see. So these were what you would you characterize these things as gossip? Maybe. So, and then Colleen continues, I just took it as things she had experienced and told me. Like, I didn't know if they were accurate or not. This is Colleen pointing out that she's not sure if what Blake told her was accurate. Did you do anything to verify that Justin had in fact said that he met you through the church? No, because at the time I already wasn't speaking to Justin because of things that happened between he and I that had nothing to do with Blake. Did it upset you that she was gossiping? And I mean, there were lots of times that I preferred, I mean, all the time and then it ends. It's, that's the end of the deposition. You don't get to answer how she feels about gossip, but it does sound like she prefers no gossip. Anyhow, so yeah, a clear distinction between the things that that Colleen seems to make clear were decisions that she made on her own part and impressions she had prior to Blake versus the stuff that she heard directly from Blake. And honestly, I was a little surprised that less of it came direct from Blake than I imagined. So yeah, I'm curious to know what you think, if any of this was a slightly different take on what you'd assumed or imagined as well. And yeah, I think all in all, it's just really, it's a great different viewpoint that you get from Colleen on all of this, and good examination of some things I'd maybe assumed were different. And I think, she had some good notes, and we got on material, and we get to see her real opinions on it from the beginning, because with the whole issue of sexiness and our ratings and what is the book and what is the main theme, and all those early correspondence with Wayfarer. And yeah, this did raise some questions for me just about facts and impressions I had. Again, nothing that really affects the overall case in terms of any of Blake's allegations of harassment or some campaign against her. Again, that's just taken to crazy extremes and really only hurt everyone. And we don't know that any of these people saw, other than Blake, saw any kind of harassment claims, official legal filings coming out of all of this in the end. Probably Blake and Ryan didn't either. I think they're just responding to the backlash and its reputation control more than standing up for women. I mean, yeah. I think I mentioned my very first episode, if everyone had loved her and she got all the accolades she wanted, I don't think she'd be putting herself on the line to stand up for women. But that's just my opinion right now. But and none of it had to really come to this if it wasn't for that premiere move to draw some extra attention to all of this, because I think that's really where the backlash went into overdrive. But did Colleen deserve as much as she got when she just was following the orders of marketing, and maybe she didn't. I don't agree with her on following Justin or anything like that, because I think it was immature, but that's different than maybe deserving all the backlash that she got and getting lumped in with some of the stuff that she really wasn't as directly as involved as we might think. So yeah, Colleen's position is pretty extraordinary, and this whole situation was extraordinarily fortunate and successful up to a point, and then extraordinarily crazily messed up, and could be some sort of cautionary tale for everybody, I think. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little journey, or big journey it turned into. Thanks so much for hanging out and hanging in here today with this experiment in a bit of a longer format. Probably do something else next time, a little shorter, but I've really appreciated all your comments and support along the way, and I hope to see you again here soon.